Ethan Carter's final mission took him to the edge of the solar system, where the faint energy readings led him to a chilling discovery. Hidden within the shadows of an asteroid belt was a cluster of the Veil's remnants, small fragmented swarms that pulsed with faint but unmistakable life. They were weak, disorganized, and clearly struggling to regroup, but Ethan knew it wouldn't last long. If left unchecked, these fragments would grow stronger, reforming into something even more dangerous than before. Positioning the peregrine asterisk as bait, Ethan activated the ship's systems to emit a powerful quantum signal, a beacon designed to draw the Veil's attention. It didn't take long for the swarm to respond. Slowly, they began to move toward him, their forms shifting and merging, as if sensing an opportunity. Ethan watched the monitors intently, his heart pounding but his mind calm. He had known this moment would come, and he was ready. As the swarm closed in, Ethan initiated the trap. He deployed the quantum disruptor, positioning it at the center of the asteroid field. Then, with careful precision, he programmed the device to unleash its full power in a single concentrated burst. But there was one final step: activating the disruptor manually. This meant staying behind to ensure its success, knowing he wouldn't survive the explosion. Clara's voice crackled through the communicator she had given him, breaking the silence. "Ethan, please tell me you're not doing what I think you're doing." Ethan smiled faintly, holding the small device in his hand. "Sorry, Clara. This has to be done. You can't do this alone," she pleaded, her voice trembling. "Come back. We'll find another way." "There isn't another way," Ethan replied softly. "But don't worry. I'm not afraid anymore. This is where I'm supposed to be." Before Clara could respond, Ethan powered down the communicator, cutting off the connection. He didn't want to hear her protests or feel the weight of her grief. Instead, he focused on the task ahead, running through the final checks to ensure the disruptor would function perfectly. As the swarm surrounded the peregrine asterisk, closing in like a dark tide, Ethan activated the countdown sequence. The minutes ticked by slowly, each second feeling heavier than the last. Ethan sat in the cockpit, staring out at the endless expanse of stars. Memories flashed through his mind. His childhood tinkering in the garage, the pain of being expelled from the academy, the years spent building his inventions in solitude. And now, here he was, about to give everything for a cause greater than himself. For the first time in his life, he felt truly at peace. When the countdown reached 0, the quantum disruptor roared to life, releasing a blinding pulse of energy that illuminated the void. The Veil's remnants were obliterated instantly, their existence erased completely. In the same moment, the peregrine asterisk was consumed by the explosion, vanishing without a trace. Back at the academy, Clara and Liam stood in stunned silence as the energy wave rippled across the solar system. They had felt the pulse, seen the light. It was over. Tears streamed down Clara's face as she whispered, "He did it." In the days that followed, Ethan's sacrifice became legend. Stories of his bravery spread across the galaxy, inspiring countless others to dream bigger and push boundaries. The Academy erected a monument in his honor, inscribed with the words he had once spoken: "Sometimes you have to break the rules to change the stars." Years later, cadets still looked up at the sky, dreaming of following in the footsteps of the boy who had returned to save them all. Though Ethan Carter was gone, his legacy lived on, a testament to the power of courage, innovation, and selflessness. The Veil was gone, but Ethan Carter couldn't shake the feeling that something was still wrong. The Academy had celebrated their victory, and life was slowly returning to normal. Yet Ethan noticed subtle signs of unease among the crew. Reports trickled in about strange energy readings near the edge of the solar system, faint echoes of the Veil's presence. At first, many dismissed them as residual effects from the battle, but Ethan wasn't convinced. He spent hours analyzing the data, piecing together fragments of information until a troubling conclusion formed in his mind. They're not completely gone. Ethan said during a private meeting with Clara and Liam. The disruptor destroyed their hive mind, but some parts of the Veil might have survived. If they regroup, they'll come back stronger than before. Clara frowned. Are you sure? We hit them with everything we had. I'm not sure of anything, Ethan admitted, but I can't ignore the evidence. If even a small piece of their swarm escaped, it could rebuild. And next time, they'll know how to counter us. Liam crossed his arms. So what do we do? Hunt them down? Ethan nodded. Exactly. But we won't be able to defeat them head-on. We need to finish what we started, permanently. The plan was risky. Ethan proposed using Asterisk, the peregrine asterisk, as a decoy, luring any surviving fragments of the Veil into a trap where the quantum disruptor could be deployed at maximum power. The catch was that the disruptor would require manual activation, meaning someone would have to stay behind to ensure its success. When Ethan volunteered himself, both Clara and Liam immediately objected. No way, Clara said firmly. You've done enough. Let someone else handle this. It has to be me, Ethan replied. I built the disruptor. I know how it works better than anyone. Besides, this is my responsibility. Liam stepped forward, his voice rising. That's not fair, Ethan. You don't have to do everything alone. We're a team, remember? Ethan smiled faintly, touched by their concern. I appreciate that. But this isn't just about me. It's about protecting everyone here. If I don't do this, the Veil could return and destroy everything we've worked for. The argument went on late into the night, but eventually Clara and Liam relented. They knew Ethan was right, no matter how much it hurt to admit it. Together, they helped him prepare for the mission, fine-tuning the disruptor and mapping out the coordinates of the mysterious energy readings. As the launch date approached, the weight of goodbye settled heavily over them. On the morning of the mission, Ethan stood outside Asterisk, the peregrine asterisk, surrounded by those who had become his friends. Olivia Drake approached him, her usual stern expression softened by gratitude. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. But thank you for everything. Ethan nodded. Take care of the Academy. Make sure it stays a place where people can dream big. Professor Helen Meyer also came forward, surprising him with a rare moment of vulnerability. I misjudged you, Mr. Carter, she admitted. And for that, I'm sorry. Ethan smiled. Apology accepted. As he climbed aboard Asterisk, the peregrine asterisk, Clara handed him a small device, a prototype communicator she had been working on. Just in case, she said, though they both knew there was little chance of survival. Ethan took it without a word, his throat too tight to speak. Finally, it was time to go. Ethan powered up the engines and gave one last glance at the faces below. Then, with a deep breath, he set course for the edge of the solar system. As the ship disappeared into the void, Clara and Liam watched silently, tears streaming down their faces. They knew Ethan wouldn't return, but they also knew his sacrifice would save countless lives. Alone in the cockpit, Ethan stared ahead at the endless expanse of stars. He thought about his past, the rejection, the struggles, the moments of triumph, and realized he had finally found his purpose. Whatever happened next, he was ready. As the days passed, life at Nova Galactic Academy slowly began to return to normal, or at least as close to normal as it could get after such a devastating attack. Repairs were underway, with engineers working tirelessly to rebuild damaged structures and restore vital systems. The survivors carried a mix of emotions: relief that the battle was over, grief for those they had lost, and determination to ensure nothing like this would ever happen again. Ethan Carter found himself caught in the middle of it all, balancing his role as both a hero and an outsider. Despite the respect he had earned, Ethan still felt out of place. He wasn't used to being surrounded by people who looked up to him, and the constant attention made him uneasy. Some cadets sought him out for advice, eager to learn from the man who had single-handedly turned the tide of the war. Others whispered behind his back, questioning whether his success was just a fluke. Even Olivia Drake, though grateful for his contributions, seemed hesitant to fully embrace him as one of their own. One afternoon, Ethan was called to a meeting with the Academy's leadership team. Sitting around the table were Olivia, Professor Helen Meyer, Daniel Hayes, and several other high-ranking officials. They discussed plans to upgrade the Academy's defenses, incorporating technology inspired by Ethan's quantum disruptor. When Olivia asked Ethan for input, he hesitated before speaking. The disruptor worked because it was unpredictable, he explained. If you want to stay ahead of future threats, you need to keep thinking outside the box. Don't rely on what's always been done. His words sparked debate among the group. While some agreed with him, others argued that too much innovation could lead to chaos. Ethan listened patiently, knowing better than anyone how hard it was to challenge tradition. Still, he couldn't help but feel frustrated. For all their talk of progress, many of them seemed unwilling to truly embrace change. After the meeting, Clara approached him in the hallway. "You okay?" she asked, noticing the tension in his expression. Ethan sighed. "I'm fine. It's just, they don't get it. They're willing to use my ideas, but they don't really understand them, and they probably never will." Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "That doesn't mean your work isn't valuable. You've already changed things, Ethan. Maybe not everything, but enough to make a difference." Her words gave him some comfort, but they didn't erase the lingering doubts in his mind. That night, Ethan returned to Asterisk, the peregrine Asterisk, sitting alone in the cockpit as he stared out at the stars. He thought about his journey, the years of rejection, the battles fought, and the lives saved. He had come so far, yet he still felt like an outsider looking in. The next morning, Ethan decided to take a walk outside the Academy grounds. The air was crisp, and the horizon glowed with the first light of dawn. As he strolled along the edge of a nearby crater, he spotted Liam Torres training a group of young pilots. When Liam saw Ethan, he waved him over. "Hey, genius," Liam said with a grin. "Care to give these kids some pointers?" Ethan chuckled. "I'm no teacher." "Sure you are," Liam replied. "You've got more experience than most of us combined." Reluctantly, Ethan joined the session, sharing stories of his battles and explaining the principles behind the quantum disruptor. The cadets listened intently, their eyes wide with admiration. For the first time in years, Ethan felt a sense of belonging, not because he was accepted, but because he was making a difference. Later that evening, Ethan stood once again beneath the stars, reflecting on everything that had happened. He realized that his journey wasn't just about proving himself or earning forgiveness. It was about leaving something behind, something that would inspire others to dream bigger and reach further. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough. The aftermath of the battle left everyone shaken but alive. The Veil's forces were gone, their swarm intelligence shattered into nothingness. Ships from the Nova Galactic Academy floated in weary silence among the debris of war. Ethan Carter leaned back in the cockpit of Asterisk, the peregrine Asterisk, his body heavy with exhaustion. His hands trembled as he powered down the quantum disruptor, the machine that had saved them all. Clara Bennett sat beside him, her face pale but relieved. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. The weight of what they'd just accomplished hung thick in the air. As the Academy fleet regrouped, damage reports began pouring in. Many ships had been lost, and countless lives had been sacrificed. Liam Torres's squadron had taken heavy casualties, leaving only a handful of pilots still standing. Despite the losses, there was a sense of triumph. For the first time in months, people dared to smile. Ethan watched from a distance as Olivia Drake addressed the surviving crew, her voice firm, but tinged with emotion. "Today, we proved that even in the face of impossible odds, we can prevail," she said, "and we owe our success to one person, Ethan Carter." The words hit Ethan like a punch to the gut. He hadn't expected gratitude, let alone praise. As the crowd turned to look at him, some clapping, others nodding in respect, he felt a strange mix of pride and discomfort. This wasn't why he'd come back to the academy. He hadn't sought recognition or redemption. He'd simply wanted to help. Yet here he was, standing in the spotlight once again. Later that evening, Ethan found himself in the command center, staring at the stars through a cracked viewport. Clara joined him, holding 2 cups of steaming coffee. She handed one to him without a word, and they stood side by side in companionable silence. After a while, she spoke. "You did good out there," she said softly. "Better than anyone could have hoped for." "I just did what I had to do," Ethan replied, sipping the bitter liquid. "We all did." Clara nodded, then hesitated. "Do you think, after everything, they'll finally see you differently?" Ethan shrugged. "Does it matter? The academy's safe now. That's what counts." But deep down, he knew it mattered more than he wanted to admit. For years, he carried the sting of rejection, the memory of being cast out for thinking differently. Now, those same differences had saved the day. Still, he couldn't shake the feeling that this newfound respect was fragile, built on necessity rather than understanding. The next morning, Ethan attended a debriefing session led by Olivia Drake. She outlined plans to rebuild the academy and strengthen its defenses against future threats. When she called on Ethan to share his thoughts, he hesitated. Then, slowly, he began to speak, not about technology or tactics, but about trust. "We won because we worked together," he said, "because we stopped seeing each other as rivals and started seeing each other as teammates. If we want to protect this place, we can't go back to the way things were." His words resonated with the room. Even Professor Helen Meyer, who had always been one of his harshest critics, seemed moved. "Perhaps," she admitted quietly, "we underestimated you, Mr. Carter." After the meeting, Ethan wandered the damaged halls of the academy, taking in the scars of battle. He passed groups of cadets cleaning up rubble, their faces filled with determination. They reminded him of himself at their age, young, eager, and full of dreams. One group approached him, asking questions about the disruptor and how he'd designed it. Ethan smiled, answering patiently, realizing that his journey might inspire others to think bigger and bolder. By the end of the day, Ethan felt a glimmer of peace. The academy wasn't perfect, it never would be, but it was changing. And so was he. The battle began near Saturn's rings, where the Veil had gathered in overwhelming numbers. Their ships loomed like dark clouds against the golden glow of the planet, their forms shifting and merging as if alive. Ethan Carter sat at the controls of Asterisk, the peregrine Asterisk, his heart pounding but his hands steady. Behind him, Clara Bennett monitored the quantum disruptor, ensuring it was ready for deployment. Outside, Liam Torres led a squadron of pilots in sleek starfighters, weaving through enemy formations to draw fire away from Ethan's ship. As soon as they entered the fray, chaos erupted. The Veil attacked with relentless precision, their weapons tearing through the Academy's defenses. Ships exploded in bursts of light, and debris floated aimlessly in the void. Despite the odds, Ethan remained focused. He piloted Asterisk, the peregrine Asterisk, with skill, dodging blasts and slipping through gaps in the swarm. His unorthodox maneuvers caught the Veil off guard, creating openings for Liam's squadron to strike back. Clara's voice crackled over the comms. "Disruptor is charging," she reported. "We need 30 more seconds." 30 seconds too long, Ethan muttered under his breath. He pushed the engines harder, zigzagging through the battlefield, while keeping the disruptor safe. Around him, explosions lit up the darkness, and alarms blared as enemy drones closed in. One of them grazed the hull of Asterisk, the peregrine Asterisk, sending sparks flying inside the cockpit. Ethan gritted his teeth but didn't panic. He knew panic would only make things worse. Liam's voice came through next, strained but determined. "Ethan, we can't hold them off much longer. They're adapting faster than we thought." "I know," Ethan replied. "Just keep them busy a little longer." He glanced at the disruptor's status display. 20 seconds left. 10, 5. Finally, Clara shouted, "It's ready. Deploying now." Ethan activated the disruptor, unleashing a pulse of quantum energy that rippled outward like a wave. For a moment, everything seemed to freeze. Then, one by one, the Veil's ships began to falter. Their movements grew sluggish, their attacks less coordinated. Some broke apart entirely, dissolving into harmless particles. Cheers erupted over the comms as the tide of the battle shifted dramatically. But the victory was short-lived. The Veil's central hive mind, located deep within their largest ship, quickly adapted to the disruptor's effects. Within minutes, their forces regrouped, stronger and angrier than before. Ethan cursed under his breath. "They're countering it already," he said. "We need to hit them harder, directly target their core." "That'll mean getting close," Clara warned. "Too close." "I don't see another option," Ethan replied grimly. He turned to Liam. "Can you cover me?" "You've got 10 minutes, tops," Liam answered. "After that, we're out of ammo." 10 minutes is all I need," Ethan said. With that, he steered the peregrine asterisk toward the heart of the Veil's formation, dodging increasingly aggressive attacks. Clara worked furiously to recalibrate the disruptor, adjusting its settings for maximum impact. Sweat dripped down her face as she typed commands into the console, her fingers moving faster than ever before. Outside, Liam and his squadron fought valiantly, drawing enemy fire and sacrificing their own safety to protect Ethan. Ships exploded around them, and the comms filled with static as pilots called out damage reports. Still, they held their ground, buying precious time for Ethan to reach his target. Finally, the peregrine asterisk arrived within range of the Veil's central ship. Ethan locked onto the hive mind and prepared to fire. "This is it," he said, his voice calm despite the storm raging outside. "Hold on tight." Clara braced herself as Ethan activated the disruptor one final time. A massive burst of energy shot forth, striking the core of the Veil's consciousness. The effect was immediate and devastating. The entire swarm shuddered, then collapsed, breaking apart into fragments that drifted lifelessly into space. For a moment, there was silence. Then cheers erupted across the fleet. They had done it. They had won. But as Ethan stared at the wreckage, his relief was tempered by exhaustion. He knew this victory had come at a cost, and the scars of battle would linger long after the dust settled. The days leading up to the completion of the quantum disruptor were intense. Ethan Carter pushed himself and his team harder than ever before. The lab buzzed with activity as engineers, technicians, and cadets worked around the clock to bring the weapon to life. Blueprints covered every surface, wires snaked across the floor, and machines hummed loudly in the background. Despite the chaos, there was a sense of purpose in the air. For the first time in weeks, people dared to hope that victory against the Veil might be possible. Ethan spent most of his time fine-tuning the disruptor's core, a delicate piece of technology designed to generate quantum interference on an unprecedented scale. It was the heart of the entire project, and he refused to let anyone else handle it. Clara Bennett stayed by his side, helping him run simulations and troubleshoot issues. Together, they discovered potential flaws in the design and found ways to fix them. Liam Torres joined them occasionally, offering suggestions based on his experience as a pilot. Even Daniel Hayes, who had once mocked Ethan's inventions, pitched in, lending his expertise to improve the disruptor's power systems. But progress came at a cost. Sleep became a luxury none of them could afford. Meals were quick bites grabbed between tests. Tempers flared when things went wrong, which happened often. One night, after yet another failed simulation, Ethan slammed his fist on the table in frustration. "Why isn't this working?" he muttered, staring at the glowing hologram of the disruptor's schematics. Clara placed a hand on his shoulder. "You're pushing too hard," she said gently. "Even geniuses need breaks." "I don't have time for breaks," Ethan snapped, though his tone softened almost immediately. "If we don't get this right, everyone here is going to die." "We know what's at stake," Clara replied firmly. "But you're not alone anymore. Let us help you carry the weight." Her words struck a chord. For so long, Ethan had shouldered everything by himself, afraid to trust others. But now, surrounded by people who believed in him, he realized he didn't have to face the challenge alone. Taking a deep breath, he nodded. "Okay," he said. "Let's try one more test. If it fails again, we'll rethink our approach." The next simulation was different. This time, instead of rushing through the process, the team double-checked every detail. They adjusted settings, recalibrated components, and ran preliminary checks to ensure nothing was overlooked. When they finally activated the disruptor, the results exceeded their expectations. The machine generated a pulse of quantum energy strong enough to destabilize the Veil's hive mind. At least in theory. News of their success spread quickly. Olivia Drake called an emergency meeting to discuss the next steps. As Ethan presented the disruptor's capabilities, he could feel the room's skepticism giving way to cautious optimism. Even Olivia seemed impressed, though she still voiced concerns. "This weapon is untested in real combat," she said. "Are you sure it's ready?" "It's as ready as it's going to be," Ethan replied honestly. "We can't wait any longer. The Veil is growing stronger every day. If we don't act now, we'll lose our chance." After much debate, the decision was made. The Academy would launch a counterattack, using the quantum disruptor as its centerpiece. Ethan insisted on piloting Asterisk, the peregrine Asterisk himself, arguing that no one else understood the weapon's intricacies well enough to deploy it effectively. Clara and Liam volunteered to join him, along with a small squadron of pilots tasked with providing cover. As the mission date approached, Ethan felt a mix of emotions: excitement, fear, and determination. He knew the risks involved. If the disruptor failed, or if the Veil adapted too quickly, the battle could end in disaster. But he also knew this was their best shot at survival. Late one night, as he stood alone in the lab staring at the disruptor, Clara found him. "You're thinking about the odds, aren't you?" she asked softly. Ethan nodded. "Yeah, but I'm also thinking about something else. For years, I let my past define me, let it make me bitter. Now, I finally have a chance to do something meaningful, something bigger than myself." Clara smiled. "Then let's make it count." The morning of the attack arrived all too soon. As Ethan climbed into Asterisk, the peregrine Asterisk, he glanced back at the Academy one last time. The building was battered but still standing, a symbol of resilience. With a deep breath, he activated the engines and prepared to face the Veil. Whatever happened next, he was ready. As Ethan Carter settled into his role at the Nova Galactic Academy, he began to uncover the truth about the enemy they faced. The attackers were known as the Veil, a mysterious alien force that had appeared without warning. They weren't like any species the Academy had encountered before. They were a swarm intelligence, a collective of countless tiny organisms that could merge together to form ships, weapons, and even living shields. What made them truly terrifying was their ability to adapt. Every time the Academy tried a new tactic, the Veil countered it almost instantly, using stolen technology to evolve and grow stronger. Ethan spent long hours studying data from previous battles. He pored over recordings of skirmishes, analyzing how the Veil moved, attacked, and absorbed defeated ships. The more he learned, the clearer it became. Conventional weapons wouldn't work against them. Missiles, lasers, and energy shields were useless because the Veil could replicate and improve upon anything they captured. Even starships equipped with the latest defenses fell within minutes. It was as if fighting them only made them stronger. One evening, while working late in the engineering lab, Ethan shared his findings with Clara Bennett, a strategist who had been assigned to assist him. Clara was younger than Ethan, probably in her late 20s, but she had a sharp mind and a calm demeanor. She listened intently as Ethan explained his theory. The problem isn't just their numbers or their speed. Ethan said, pointing to a holographic projection of a recent battle. It's their ability to learn. Every time we attack, they analyze our methods and adapt. If we keep doing what we've always done, we're going to lose. Clara frowned, leaning closer to the projection. So what do you suggest? We can't just stop fighting. We need something they can't adapt to, Ethan replied. Something unpredictable. Something that targets their core, their hive mind. Clara's eyes widened. You mean, destroy their central consciousness? Exactly, Ethan said. If we can disrupt their connection, the entire swarm will collapse. But it won't be easy. We'll need to build a weapon capable of generating quantum-level interference, a disruptor strong enough to unravel their system. Clara hesitated. That sounds complicated. Do you even know if it's possible? I don't, Ethan admitted, but I'm willing to try. And I think I might have an idea where to start. Over the next few days, Ethan threw himself into designing the quantum disruptor. He worked tirelessly, sketching blueprints, running simulations, and testing prototypes. Clara stayed by his side, helping him refine his ideas and offering strategic insights. Together, they formed an unlikely partnership, her tactical expertise complementing his technical brilliance. Slowly, others began to take notice. Among them was Liam Torres, a young pilot who had grown up hearing stories about Ethan's expulsion. At first, Liam was skeptical, like many of the cadets. But after seeing Ethan in action, he became one of his strongest supporters. You're not just building a weapon, Liam told him one day. You're giving us hope. Not everyone shared Liam's enthusiasm. Olivia Drake remained wary, questioning whether Ethan's plan was too risky. If this fails, we'll have wasted valuable time and resources, she warned during a tense meeting. We can't afford mistakes. I understand the stakes, Ethan said firmly. But doing nothing is just as dangerous. Trust me. I've spent 20 years preparing for moments like this. His words struck a chord. Though some still doubted him, others began to rally around his vision. Engineers volunteered to help build the disruptor, pilots offered to test its deployment systems, and even Professor Helen Meyer softened slightly, admitting that Ethan's approach showed promise. For the first time in years, Ethan felt like part of a team. He wasn't just proving himself, he was inspiring others to believe in possibilities beyond the rules. As the quantum disruptor took shape, so did a glimmer of hope for the Academy. Against all odds, Ethan Carter was becoming the leader he was always meant to be. When Ethan Carter arrived at Nova Galactic Academy, he barely recognized the place. The once gleaming towers and sprawling campuses were now scared by battle. Craters dotted the landscape, and smoke rose from damaged buildings. Ships floated lifelessly in orbit, their hulls torn apart by enemy fire. It was a far cry from the pristine institution he had been expelled from 20 years earlier. As Ethan stepped out of Asterisk, the Peregrine Asterisk, his homemade starship, he couldn't help but feel a pang of sadness. This was supposed to be a beacon of knowledge and progress, not a battlefield. A group of soldiers approached him cautiously, their weapons raised. Ethan held up his hands to show he meant no harm. I'm here to help, he said simply. After verifying his identity, they led him to a makeshift command center inside the Academy's main hall. The room was chaotic. Officers shouted orders, screens displayed maps of ongoing battles, and wounded personnel lay on stretchers along the walls. In the middle of it all stood Olivia Drake, now an admiral in the Galactic Fleet. She looked older, her face lined with stress, but her sharp eyes still carried the same intensity Ethan remembered. Olivia's expression hardened when she saw him. Ethan Carter, she said coldly. I didn't think you'd actually come. Her tone made it clear she doubted his usefulness. Ethan ignored the jab and scanned the room. He spotted familiar faces. Daniel Hayes, now a lead engineer, typing furiously at a console. Professor Helen Meyer, her hair streaked with gray, consulting with a group of tacticians. None of them seemed happy to see him. We don't have time for distractions, Olivia continued. If you're here to settle old scores, this isn't the place. I'm not here for that, Ethan replied calmly. I intercepted your distress signal. You said you needed help. I'm offering mine. Olivia crossed her arms, clearly skeptical. And what exactly can you do? Last I heard, you were fixing broken appliances back on Earth. Ethan didn't rise to the bait. Instead, he pulled out a small device from his pocket, a prototype quantum scanner, and placed it on the table. This is just one of the things I've been working on, he said. It can detect cloaked ships and predict enemy movements. I also brought designs for a faster-than-light engine and a shield generator that could protect your fleet. But if you don't want my help, I'll leave. For a moment, there was silence. Then Daniel Hayes spoke up. Wait, he said, picking up the scanner. This tech, it's incredible. How did you build this? I've had a lot of free time, Ethan replied with a faint smile. Professor Meyer stepped forward, studying the device. Even if this works, we can't trust him, she said sharply. He has no training, no discipline. What makes you think you can handle combat situations? Ethan met her gaze steadily. You don't have to trust me, he said. Just give me access to your resources, and I'll prove I can make a difference. The room fell silent again as everyone weighed his words. Finally, Olivia sighed. Fine, she said reluctantly. But if you mess this up, it's on you. With that, Ethan was given temporary clearance to work alongside the Academy's engineers and strategists. At first, many treated him with suspicion, mocking his homemade gadgets and questioning his methods. But Ethan didn't let it bother him. He dove into the task at hand, analyzing data, running simulations, and tweaking his inventions to fit the Academy's needs. Slowly, his persistence began to pay off. The quantum scanner proved invaluable in locating hidden enemy forces, and his shield generator design showed promise in early tests. As days turned into weeks, Ethan started to earn grudging respect from some of the crew. Younger cadets, inspired by his story, sought him out for advice. Even Daniel warmed up to him, admitting that Ethan's unconventional thinking might be exactly what they needed to turn the tide. But not everyone was convinced. Olivia remained distant, watching Ethan closely, waiting for him to fail. Despite the challenges, Ethan felt alive in a way he hadn't in years. For the first time since his expulsion, he was part of something bigger than himself. And deep down, he knew this was his chance to rewrite history, not just for himself, but for everyone who had ever doubted him. After leaving the Nova Galactic Academy, Ethan Carter returned to Earth with nothing but a suitcase of clothes and a head full of ideas. Life wasn't easy for him at first. Without the resources of the Academy or the support of his peers, he had to find ways to survive on his own. He took odd jobs to make ends meet, fixing broken appliances, tutoring kids in math and science, and even working as a delivery driver. But deep down, Ethan never stopped dreaming. Every spare moment he had was spent tinkering in a tiny workshop he set up in the basement of his modest home. Ethan's workshop quickly became his sanctuary. It was cluttered with tools, wires, and half-finished projects, but to him, it was a place where anything was possible. Using scraps he found in junkyards and parts he salvaged from old machines, he began building things no one else could imagine. By the time he was 16, he had created a small robot that could clean his house. By 18, he had designed a device capable of purifying polluted water. And by 25, he had built a prototype engine that could travel faster than light, a feat scientists had been trying to achieve for centuries. Despite his incredible inventions, Ethan kept a low profile. He didn't seek fame or recognition. Instead, he focused on perfecting his work. The memories of his expulsion from the Academy still haunted him, and he vowed not to let anyone dismiss his ideas again. He documented everything he created, storing his designs in secure digital files. But he rarely showed his work to others. When people asked what he did for a living, he simply told them he was an inventor. Most people didn't believe him, assuming he was just another dreamer with big plans but little to show for it. As the years passed, Ethan followed news about the Nova Galactic Academy closely. He read articles about former classmates like Olivia Drake, who had risen to become a celebrated admiral in the Galactic Fleet. He saw interviews with Daniel Hayes, a brilliant engineer whose innovations were changing the way starships were built. Even Professor Helen Meyer, who had expelled him, was now considered one of the leading voices in interstellar diplomacy. Each story reminded Ethan of what he had lost and fueled his determination to prove himself. One evening, while testing a new piece of equipment in his workshop, Ethan noticed something strange. His communication console lit up with a faint signal, barely audible over the static. At first, he thought it was interference from a nearby satellite. But as he adjusted the frequency, the message became clearer. It was a distress call, sent from deep space. The voice on the other end was calm but urgent. "This is Nova Galactic Academy. We are under attack. If anyone can hear this, please respond." Ethan froze. For a moment, he couldn't believe what he was hearing. The Academy, the same place that had rejected him, was asking for help. Part of him wanted to ignore the message. After all, they hadn't cared about him when he needed support. But another part of him felt a pang of responsibility. He knew the kind of dangers that lurked in space, and if the Academy was truly in trouble, it could mean disaster for the entire galaxy. For days, Ethan wrestled with his decision. He replayed the distress signal over and over, listening to the desperation in the voice. Slowly, his bitterness began to fade, replaced by curiosity and a sense of duty. Finally, he made up his mind. Gathering his most advanced inventions, including the faster-than-light engine he had spent years perfecting, Ethan prepared for the journey of a lifetime. He climbed aboard Asterisk, the Peregrine Asterisk, a sleek starship he had built entirely on his own, and set course for the Academy. As the Earth disappeared behind him, Ethan felt a mix of emotions: fear, excitement, and a glimmer of hope. He didn't know what awaited him at the Academy, but one thing was certain. This was his chance to rewrite his story. In the year 2847, 12-year-old Ethan Carter was already known across the galaxy as a child prodigy. His mind worked faster than most computers, and his ideas were so advanced that even seasoned scientists struggled to keep up with him. From building miniature fusion reactors in his garage to solving complex astrophysics equations before breakfast, Ethan had always been different. While other kids played games or watched holovids, he spent hours reading about wormholes, quantum mechanics, and alien civilizations. To everyone who knew him, it seemed like Ethan was destined for greatness. When Ethan was accepted into the Nova Galactic Academy, humanity celebrated. The Academy wasn't just any school. It was the training ground for the galaxy's brightest minds and bravest leaders. Students came from all corners of the universe, representing countless species and cultures. For humans, having one of their own attend such a prestigious institution was a source of immense pride. Ethan's parents beamed with joy, imagining their son becoming a hero who would bring glory to Earth. But deep down, Ethan felt the weight of expectation pressing on his small shoulders. From the moment he arrived at the Academy, Ethan stood out, not just because he was human, but because he refused to follow the rules. While other students carefully followed instructions during experiments, Ethan took shortcuts, rewriting protocols to make them more efficient. When professors assigned projects, he turned them in days early, often adding features no one had asked for. At first, his teachers praised his creativity, but soon they began to see him as disruptive. His unorthodox methods clashed with the rigid structure of the Academy, and whispers of trouble started to spread. Things came to a head during a critical simulation exercise designed to test teamwork under pressure. Ethan's team was tasked with navigating a virtual starship through a dangerous asteroid field while defending against enemy drones. Most teams approached the challenge cautiously, working together step by step. But Ethan had a better idea. Instead of following the standard procedure, he hacked into the simulation program and rewrote its parameters. With his modifications, the ship could detect threats faster and maneuver with unprecedented precision. What should have taken hours was completed in minutes. At first, Ethan thought he'd done something incredible. He expected applause, maybe even admiration. But instead, the instructors called him into a meeting. They accused him of cheating, saying his actions undermined the purpose of the exercise. "This isn't about showing off," Professor Helen Meyer scolded him. "It's about learning to work as part of a team." Ethan tried to explain that his changes didn't break the rules, they improved them. But the professors weren't convinced. In their eyes, Ethan had crossed a line. The final blow came when another student falsely claimed Ethan had sabotaged their equipment during the simulation. Though there was no proof, the accusation sealed his fate. Within days, Ethan was expelled from the academy. As he packed his belongings and prepared to leave, he overheard classmates whispering behind his back. Some called him arrogant. Others said he deserved what he got. Only a few, like Olivia Drake, looked at him with pity. But pity wasn't what Ethan wanted. All he wanted was a chance to prove himself. Back on Earth, Ethan carried the pain of rejection with him. He promised himself he'd never let anyone underestimate him again. Little did he know, this wasn't the end of his story, it was only the beginning.